And so to Oren Cass, who says the president's trade war has made progress in correcting long-standing trade imbalances. A year ago, before the administration took place, Oren was on Cressman's Business, and then he told me the economists were predicting doom were incorrect.
The last time we heard this much extraordinarily confident consensus among economists, it was, of course, when they were unanimously telling the American people we needed to eliminate our tariffs on China and welcome China into the World Trade Organization because free trade with China would be wonderful for America. And they got that exactly wrong, and they're getting it exactly wrong again because economists don't think very well about trade.
Now, Oren Cass writes that although the president recognized the problem, his strategy has been haphazard and heightened uncertainty, and that may be having an effect on the economy. Stocks have recovered and are near record highs. The data shows president's policies have failed to drive the hiring in manufacturing. Oren Cass is the founder of American Compass. He served as the director of policy for Mitt Romney's campaign in 2012. Oren's with me. Good to see you, sir. I'm grateful that you're joining us tonight. The debate over the tariffs and what they will do long term to the U.S. economy, or the ability of the U.S. to rewrite the global rules on trade, that is happening at the moment. Two very distinct views. You're in the favor on the side that says it's a good thing and it's working.
Well, I think, I'm glad you played that clip from a year ago because I think, we remember the way economists set their hair on fire. Of course, they did it again, what blew their hair up. I don't know what's more extreme than setting on fire. When Trump announced tariffs, at these kinds of levels in April, and their predictions have been wrong. Their predictions have been wrong on technical issues. The 10-year yield has not gone the way they said it would. The value of the dollar has not gone the way they said it would. And they've been wrong generally about the direction of the economy. Obviously, markets have been very strong. Unemployment has remained low. Investment remains high.
Right.
And we are seeing what we want to see, which is we're seeing the beginning of major investment in the United States, large commitments to investment, shovels breaking ground in a lot of places. That's the goal here, and it's finally starting to work.
Well, we had somebody on the program yesterday who said exactly the opposite. That, yeah, there were a few chosen projects, but that this idea of a lot of the trade deals that were announced earlier, 500 billion here, 200 billion there, will never come to fruition because there's no markers, they are too vague, there's no mechanism for execution. The EU deal, for example, is all promise and so far not much delivery. So yes, there is more investment, but it's not on the scale that people like you would have us believe is the argument.
Well, the investment is, I'm not asking anyone to believe a scale other than the scale on which it's happening. I'm not referring to those promises that may or may not come true. I'm referring to all of the massive corporations that are in fact saying we need to invest more in the United States, in part in response to the tariffs. Obviously, we've seen that from semiconductor companies, we've seen that from pharmaceutical companies, we've seen that from automakers. We've seen from JP Morgan announcing $1.5 trillion in investment commitments. And so, obviously this isn't something that happens overnight. I think it's frankly very embarrassing when somebody says, look at manufacturing jobs. Why haven't manufacturing jobs gone up yet? Obviously, you can't plan, let alone build, let alone hire for a factory in 6 months. Manufacturing jobs are something that you might see 2-3 years down the road. What we're looking for right now is how are producers responding? Are producers responding by recognizing that they're going to have to make more investments in the U.S. if they want to serve the U.S. market? And the answer is yes. And on the flip side, the question is, what happened to all of those predictions of catastrophe? As far as I can tell, none of them have happened because, as Jason Furman, the chair of Barack Obama's Council of Economic Advisors, has said in the New York Times, economists suffer from tariff derangement syndrome. For some reason, when this is the topic, instead of thoughtfully analyzing the problem, they go a little bit crazy.
Right. Okay. Let's just, but this idea that you can rewrite the global trading rules certainly vis-a-vis the United States. But I want you to listen to Ngozi Iweala, who, as you know, is the head of the WTO. And when I spoke to her during UNGA week, she was very clear that yes, a change is underway, but the rest of the world isn't necessarily, when it comes to other trading relationships, following. Have a listen, sir.
Certainly, the unilateral actions of the US have caused the most tremendous disruption to global trading rules that we've seen in 80 years. But based on the evidence and the fact we have, yes, it has disrupted global trade, but we have found through our analysis that still 72% of world trade, goods trade, is taking place on WTO terms.
So to the extent that the US is rewiring the global trading patterns, the argument will be yes, but long term to its disadvantage.
Well, I would first of all just challenge this idea that the US is the greatest disruptor to the trade system in 80 years. Obviously, that honor goes to China, which joined the WTO and promptly sought to undermine every principle of free trade that the organization has ever stood for. The organization's refusal to confront that, its inability to do anything about it, is why the WTO is at this point
Right.
fairly irrelevant to the actual direction that trade policy is going. And what we're seeing the US doing, certainly in establishing very high tariffs on China and moving toward decoupling there, toward trying to establish bilateral deals that are not on an MFN basis,
Right.
we are moving beyond that world. We're moving to a world that's actually going to take balanced trade seriously.
And we will talk more about it, so let's not leave it here before we talk again. Thank you for joining us.